Hello everybody, welcome back to another video. My name is Sneaky Snake and today we're going to be going over my military orders experience in IGL 21, kind of what that looked like, the list I was taking, the matchups I played in, and then finally just my overall thoughts. This is my first IGL, or at least the first one that's ever taken place since the military orders update, so really excited to get this one to y'all. I really enjoyed all my games except for one of them, which I'll get into, so yeah. So up first, I've got my highly classified or IGL interference list, depending on how old you are. You'll get that reference. Anyway, Crozier multi-spectral visor with the HMG. He's a really good gun piece, and he also can do the classified that requires MSV, so that's really nice. The Crozier Mine Layer MSR is just there for defense, obviously. The OS hacker can do hacking classifieds. Um, she's also providing you with a Sixth Sense hacker, which is really nice because she pairs well with the two Trinitarians that we've got in the list. Then we got a Crozier Paramedic. Um, Kind of meant to do classifieds, but I have a Knight of Montesa who's motorized with the Paramedic. And so he's obviously a lot better at doing those classifieds. I think the Crozier here is more just meant to, like, you know, if your MSR goes down or if your Crozier MSV goes down, you can try and pick them back up. Actually, like, now that I'm thinking about it, the OS, the sniper, and the HMG are kind of all like at risk of dying, just because they can do like active turn stuff. So yeah, good thing to note there. But yeah, the paramedic is more there for order reconstitution. And then I have a duo with two Knights of Santiago, the Spitfire Lieutenant, and then the KHD with the multi rifle. I really like this duo. It's very tight, very contained, only 64 points, so pretty cheap. And you're just getting a lot of capability, not to mention the fact that these guys are really good at doing classifieds. So yeah. And then I've got, like I said, the motorized Knight of Montesa, paramedic. He's a very good, like, classified doer with, the fact that he's paramedic, he's a specialist, very fast. And then, like I mentioned, also I have a Trinitarian with Mind Layer deployable repeater. Just really great for giving you that turn zero coverage, so you're really able to like block a lot of the map off. I actually have two of them, um, specifically for a Kale interference, right? Like, you want two because you want one of them to be able to do classifieds by himself because they're just really good classified objectives, grabber, whatever. Um, and then you want the other one to just sit next to the button in the middle. Just don't reveal him. Just keep him there because eventually, after you do enough classifieds, you'll get to a point where you'll be able to cancel your opponent's classifieds, and then that's when he can pop out of his in deployment and do that. So yeah, he's really good for that. Anyway, moving on to group two, I've got my Bulleteer OS Hacker Curator Core, or sorry, Harris team. Um, the only thing really of note, right, is like you have two order sergeants here. The one in the core is giving you 6 cents, so she's really adding a lot of value to your Trinitarians. And then the one in the Harris team is kind of your more like aggressive piece. Like, you're going to be pushing up with that particular order sergeant to be pitching. So yeah, she's really good in that regard. And then the curator, with the armed marksman rifle turret. I know they kind of fell out of favor, because you can't reload them anymore, obviously. But I still think she's really good. In my game, at least, the marksman rifle ended up being a really big pain in my opponent's butt. So yeah, I really enjoy her for that reason. And then there's my second Trinitarian, and then Fugazi Warcore. So overall, I really like this list. It's definitely specialized to do classified objectives, but that's okay. I mean, creating specialized lists for specific missions is always good, because it just allows you to perform in those particular missions a lot better. So yeah. That being said, would I use it in any other mission? Possibly. I'd have to do like another look around. Off the top of my head, I can't really think of any, but I haven't played like a ton of the new missions, so yeah. But I did really enjoy playing it, and I thought it was very good. So feel free to reuse this. My second list is kind of the one that's more my style. And this is my provisioning and zone of interest list. So yeah, straight into it. First thing we got here is a Knight of Justice hacker with the pitcher and multi-marksman, and then he's duoed, or sorry, Harris teamed with Teutonic Specialist and then Teutonic Tinbot. Obviously, the Teutonics are there to clear mines. Sometimes they can go on ARO if you really want to. Um, they're giving the hacker Tinbot, which is really great. And then also just providing you that extra specialist and then the SD, obviously. So really nice, relatively cheap Harris team. And then we have the Knights of Santiago, the Spitfire Lieutenant with the paramedic, and then the KHD. Sorry, the paramedic is a Knight of Montesa on foot. So I really like this Harris team. The Montesa doesn't really provide anything in terms of like fire team bonus, but he does provide a lot when you think about it, because he's giving you a really good ARO through that Blitzen, which is burst 3 on reactive, which is kind of insane. And then also he's a paramedic, so he can do some order reconstitution, which is really nice. Yeah, just a really nice Harris team. Honestly, relatively cheap considering like how much capability you're getting out of it. Specifically, like that Knight of Montesa, 20 points, insane. So yeah. And then right below that, we've got our duo of the Crosier and the Knight Commander Chain of Command. It's just a good, cheap duo. It's providing you a lot of capability and just giving you some extra ARO capability as well. Then I've got a Mulebot. He's mainly here just to be a baggage guy for your Knight Justice pitcher. I've really found that like Order Sergeants, them using their pitchers is kind of hit or miss just because they have like relatively low BS. But the Knight of Justice uses his pitchers all the time, so I find it's really helpful to be able to come back to my deployment zone and then to be able to be like refilled at the end of the states phase. And then I've got a Fugazi just to round out group one. Finally, in group two, I've got two Trinitarian multi-snipers. It's classic. I really like them as arrow pieces, and they're not too shabby on act to turn either. And then finally, a Trinitarian with deployable repeater and mine layer. He's really there just to kind of guard a section of the board. He's not going to be guarding the entire thing, obviously, but he's really going to be able to keep your opponent from being able to push heavy infantry forward, specifically heavy infantry that don't have any sort of stealth. So yeah. Oh, and then sorry, Warlord to round it all out. Yeah, I really like this list. I think it's my preferred of the two, just because like it's kind of more my speed, right? Like I really like playing with 6 knights. I think that's kind of the perfect amount of knights. And yeah, it just can do a lot of stuff. I think it can play a lot of missions, honestly. It's a little bit cheap, like a little bit slim on orders, you know. You're playing with basically 11 orders every round because like there's no guarantee that your 3 Trinitarians are going to be on the board, and even when they are on the board, odds are they're probably going to be dead, specifically the multi snipers because that's their job. Um, so you're basically just playing with one group. But that's kind of the beauty of the Trinitarian, specifically the forward observers. They're just so efficient, right? They start in the midfield, they just pop out of their camo, they walk up and they push a button, and that's all you really need to do with them sometimes. So, yeah. Um, oh yeah. So the only other thing I want to talk about is you'll notice that I took a Knight Commander chain of command in both of my lists. I just wanted to talk about that for a second. The reason why I think the chain of command Knight Commander is like basically always the play is because your lieutenants are really good in military orders. They're either giving you good whip or they're giving you swick bonus or swick decreases or whatever it is that they're providing you. It's usually better than whatever the Knight Commander is doing. And so in my mind, right, it's like, okay, I'm either taking a Knight Commander to have a safe lieutenant option, or I can take a more aggressive um, like Knight Lieutenant option, and then just bring the Knight Commander anyway to have that chain of command. Sure, he's 23 points, but he can join duos. He counts as cuirassiers. Like he's not totally useless. So yeah, I really enjoy him for that reason. I think the only case in which the Knight Commander should be a lieutenant is if you're taking the Knight Commander with the +1 LT order. Obviously, that makes sense if you're going for more of like an NCO style. I don't really do that very often, so I basically always take the chain of command. And then, last thing I'll say about that is like, even if like your lieutenant isn't necessarily doing anything for you, like not giving you more whip or giving you any sort of swig bonus, like let's say you were taking the Knight of Santiago KHD lieutenant, right? Well, I mean, he's not providing you any sort of like swick bonus, but he is an active lieutenant, and that automatically makes him more useful than the knight commander. Because, like, let's say your fire team dissolves, or you just really need that one extra order, right? Well, the Knight of Santiago, having access to that extra lieutenant order is so much more beneficial than having that lieutenant order be on the knight commander. So those are just the main reasons why I really like him. All right, so let's go over my first round, IGL Interference. In this one, I was playing against an Oban player. You can see his list up here. I'm not going to read it. Just main things to note. He had two Ryukin HRLs, and they were a big pain in my ass. They were just really hard to deal with. And my opponent was really smart. He said he was new, and I believe him, but he did play like really, really well for a new player. So yeah, I was very impressed. The Anyway, talking about his Ryukins. So what he would do is he would have the normal and then the decoy, and he would put the decoy in the more like obvious of the two locations to make you think that that like was the real one. And so, I would spend all these orders like trying to discover this Ryukin only for it to actually just be a decoy. And so it's like I was like carefully moving. I was like trying to stay in cover around this Ryukin that he wasn't revealing. And then lo and behold, it's actually just a decoy. Which, I was like, that kind of sucks. But also really smart on his, like really smart play by him. So. And then the only other thing I wanted to mention here was Samsa like totally wrecked me. So uh, my first turn, so I won the lieutenant role, and I think I decided to go first. But basically, I moved up my two Knights of Santiago in their little duo. And I moved them up near Samsa to do like a classified. And so I was like, oh, like he's just one moon guy. Like I don't have anything to worry about. These guys are way better than him. And then he proceeded to like peek over the top of a building and just totally like mince my Knights of Santiago. Never underestimate a plasma rifle, no matter who it is on, especially on a mimetism -3 guy. Like it's just insane. He just totally destroyed me. So big respect to that play. Also, he's just so fast with like his whole super jumping action. Yeah, but anything else of note? I mean, basically, like we ended up tying. I think we both did 3 or 4 classifieds. I can't remember. It was like 6-6 or 7-7, something like that. Um, but my I would say probably like one of the most pivotal parts of the game was like it was my third turn. I had one order left, and I revealed a Trinitarian like on the button in the middle to try and cancel one of his classifieds, and then of course I failed, which not a huge deal because like we still tied obviously, but it was a little bit of a bummer because I could have won just like based on that one roll, but that's just how Infinity goes sometimes. Yeah, and then only other thing I wanted to really note here was like my curator with the with the marksman rifle turret. Honestly, did really well. I was very surprised. Basically, I moved into the midfield, right, and then I kind of like created this castle. It was really cool. So the bulleteer is kind of like your hard arrow, right? Because he's got Mim 6 and he's going to be burst 2 in that link. So like he's kind of providing you with that capability. And then the order sergeant you can use to like pitch a bunch around the bolt tier, so you can kind of protect the bolt tier from hackers in that regard. And then you've got your other hackers in the list, so it's not like they can just walk in and try to like fry your order sergeant for free. And then the curator is bringing that marksman rifle turret, right? And so I just threw that on top of like a building in a super like obvious location. The problem though is like I've layered that defense at that point because the pitchers are out, so it's really hard for him to move up to get a good angle because they'll get hacked or spotlit. Not to mention that the Boletier is also watching, which is kind of hard to deal with if you don't have any MSV. And then, just turrets like on their own are just kind of a pain in the ass to deal with anyway. So yeah, I was really pleasantly surprised by how good that turret did. But yeah, that was basically everything. I think the list did really well. It could have done better, but I mean, I could have played better. Honestly, I think the list was fine. I think I just could have played better. But yeah, I made mistakes, but it's all part of the learning experience. So moving on to my zone of interest game. This one I was playing against Anexandrides. We're good buddies. We talk a lot on Discord. We've met in person at Krug. Just a great guy. I stole this from his blog post because I couldn't remember what his actual list was. So here we go. Yeah, so this game was really hard. Not that it was like, not that my opponent from the last game was like, more or less bad, but it had more to do with the fact that I think like MO playing into any sort of Pano matchup just tends to not really be as like favorable for MO. And I think most of that comes down to the fact that MO is just kind of bad at shooting, even after the rework, which, I'm not complaining about this really, but we just don't really have that many like mods. And then the guys that we do have like mods on they're just really specialized, right? So it's like, um, like a knight or a Father Crux knight is 45 points, and you're paying out the wazoo for an Albedo gunfighter who is really good. But, if you want a more general piece like the Knight of Justice, well, you're sitting at like a burst 3 gun, and while it's pretty good, yeah, it's just not the best gunfighter. And then, if you want MSV, well, you have to go for a Knight of Holy Sepulchre. Like when I say if you want MSV, I mean if you want MSV on one of your knights. And so yeah, I just feel like playing against Pano is just a little bit rough sometimes because there does tend to be a fair amount of like mimetism as well as MSV. So it's kind of hard to deal with a lot of aspects of Pano. Anyway, that's enough ranting. Um, yeah, so getting into the game. Zone of interest, I won the lieutenant role. I wanted to go first. And the reason why is because I played against my friend Hackney the other day, and he was playing TAC, and we were playing Zone of Interest, and he went first and like was able to choose where that special zone went. Um, and I think it's just really powerful because that zone scores every single round. And so it's way easier to defend that if it's right next to your deployment zone. Whereas if it's right next to your opponent's, you have to overextend to get to it. And then whoever you put there is just going to automatically die. And so for that reason, I chose to go first. I also like this is a little bit of like reverse psychology, if you will, but like in my opinion, I think the way like zone of interest works is it kind of flips the narrative, where generally like the attacker or the person with the first turn ends up being the attacker, right? And the person with the second turn is kind of normally the defender. But I think in zone of interest, because you're defending the zones, it's actually kind of flipped. Like the person with the first turn, he's the one that goes and tries to set up defenses around the zone of interest, and then he has to defend against the second turn player. And so it was kind of that line of thinking that I used when building this list, because I wanted a list that could go first but defend well against a second turn player who's trying to take the zone from me. And so that's why I have like the Trinitarians as well as the Knight of Montessa and the Crosier multi-sniper, right? Like all these guys layer to be just a lot of arrow for somebody to deal with. And at the end of the day, if they die, it's not a huge blow to the rest of my list, right? Um, and so that's kind of like how the game went. Was like I was defending my special zone for most of it, while Alexandrides was trying to kind of attack into it. So like my first turn, I basically spent that like moving up, setting up pitchers, just kind of like setting up a general defense, just so like I could keep him from moving and just like really restricting his movement with those knights specifically, um, with my pictures. And I think I did a really good job of that. He stood up his blade to try to, I think he was trying to unisolate his Knight of Justice hacker. And from like down the corridor, my Trinitarian multi sniper saw him, took the shot, and just instantly killed his blade. So that was really nice on my part. And then later that turn, he tried to use Liang Kai to run into my zone to beat my knights in CC, which would be really easy for Liang Kai. But unfortunately, I had another Trinitarian sniper who was watching Liang Kai's route, and so I was able to hit him with that shock, with the shock save, and he failed and then died. Um, which I just think is so funny, right? Because it's like it's not a huge deal that Liang Kai isn't shock immune, but every once in a while it comes up, and it's just like it just totally destroys your entire game plan. And this was kind of the same case for my opponent. That being said, his duo of Karhus just totally like rinsed my entire list. Like he killed my both Trinitarians with his Karhu Forbach. He killed a lot of the knights with it. Like it just totally blew me out of the water. So yeah, don't ever say Karhus are bad. Um, Anyway, last thing I'll note about like lists and play and stuff. The Knight of Justice missile launcher was very good. I just didn't engage it all game. I was kind of just, I just tried to ignore it. And honestly, I think it is ignorable. Obviously, it does its job very well. And like, I don't want to take that fight. So I just have to work my entire list basically around not taking that fight. Um, which is fine. That's something I'm comfortable doing, but it does definitely take up more orders than maybe would be the case if the Knight of Justice wasn't there. I just ended up like moving up my Knight of Justice hacker, and then I just isolated and mobilized his missile launcher. So that was kind of just my way of dealing with it. Yeah. So the game ended up being um, I want to say like 6-4, maybe something like that. The last turn was really intense. My Knight of Montessa was a total pain in my opponent's butt, and he just wasn't able to remove him. And then I ended up scoring the middles, like the middle button, and then one of the zones, I think. So yeah, really, really good game, really close. And honestly, I was just really happy to see the Knight of Justice missile launcher in action because that was really cool. So yeah, moving on to the final mission, and this is where I get to kind of bitch for a little bit. So yeah, I was playing the same list I used for Zone of Interest, my provisioning list. Um, so the idea, in my mind at least, around this list is like I kind of forgot to talk about this in the last game, but yeah, basically, I have my two Trinitarian multi snipers, and I think they really excel on these kind of diagonal type maps because they're just able to stack like so many mods on your opponent. Um, so yeah, like I think they just really do well in that regard. Um, yeah, I mean, not much else to say about the list that I took. It kind of did like what you would expect. Anyway, he won the lieutenant role, and he decided to go second. Wait, no, 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 sorry. I won the lieutenant role, and I decided to go second. And the reason why is because in my head, right, I was thinking like, oh, I want to go second because my, well, I think the mission is just relatively second player favored, because you grab the boxes, you dunk them in your little basketball hoop, and then you your opponent has to like try and steal them from you, and especially if somebody's going like second turn, I just feel like it's easier to steal them from your opponent, but anyway, actually, now that I'm thinking about it, I think first turn would have been way better. But whatever, we're here now. So yeah, what I didn't know was that my opponent was bringing two flyers. So going second actually totally screwed me. Why, you might ask? Well, it's because the flyers are just so good. And we're just gonna pause here for a second because I just want to talk about like flyers and how much I absolutely hate them as like models. I think they just ruined the game. Again, this isn't like a knock against my opponent. Like I love Perzan. He's a really great guy, very talented opponent. Like he totally deserved to win this game, and he's also an amazing hobbyist. This is just a rant about like flyers, so this has nothing to do with him as a person. Um, but I just hate the rules of flyers, right? Like I think that Infinity is a game where terrain matters a lot. And being limited by terrain is kind of what makes games interesting, right? Like you have to move into corridors and like you have to move around mines and stuff, and you have to like interact with a lot of your opponent's deployables. And I think that like oh, also not to mention like order efficiency is a very big part of the game. Like you have to know how to manage your orders very well, right? But I think flyers just totally throw all of that out the window, right? It's like when you can move 12 inches in one order, okay? And you can move 12 inches, not just like period, but just like over everything, right? Like, even a bear, even if a bear could move 12 inches, it still wouldn't have the mobility that a flyer would have because they're S7. And a lot of people are like, "Oh, they're S7, like that's such a liability." It's not. It's an amazing perk because they can fly over almost every terrain piece in the game. It's ridiculous. And like the fact that, right, like this Hatham can spend one order to get into position to shoot like my ARO piece. Whereas if I was going first, it would have taken me like 3 or 4 orders to move my knight team up into the midfield to be able to engage in ARO. So it's just like kind of ridiculous, I think. And I think it just like really, really like I don't know. It made the game very unfun for me. Again, not because of my opponent. He was really great to play against. He's very good. He's very talented. It's just like flyers in general, and like this isn't limited to this game in particular. Like every single game I played with flyers, it's just always not fun because it's like my opponent just gets to use a unit that breaks all the rules of Infinity. And yeah, just not my favorite thing. Um, so anyway, rant over. Back to the game. So basically, yeah, my opponent went first. His Hatham just like totally wrecked all of my guys. So like he killed my Crosier, my Mine Layer Sniper in one turn. Oh wait, no, sorry. He used his Fade to kill my Crosier. He just sacrificed his Fade because he didn't want that arrow up. I think he knew that I had two Trinitarians, so he wanted to make sure that I wasn't shooting his flyer with two snipers in one turn because that would have been, not terrible, but not very good for his flyer. Um, yeah. Anyway, so he killed my Crosier with his Fade. I think I had a Trinitarian pop out to shoot his Fade, and then I ended up killing his Fade that way. Then he used his Hatham to move into position to shoot my Trinitarian. That's when I revealed my second Trinitarian to shoot at his Hatham. So now it was two of the Trinitarians against his Hatham. I think he decided to split his burst between the two of them. Um, Basically, long story short, I think one of the Trinitarians just instantly died, and then the other one was able to land like one wound on it. Um, and then he moved his guy, or no, he finished off that Trinitarian, and then he moved him up to shoot at my Knight of Montessa, and then um, this was total bullshit. So he shot the Montessa once, right? Okay, he managed to kill it in like he just totally put it off the board in one turn. And like this is a BS7 gun, right? I'm saving on 14s. And I think I rolled like an 18, 19, 20 or something like that. I was like, oh, dude, it's just so painful. Um because like I mean, if there's one thing that can stop a flyer, it's the Knight of Montessa blitzing, and he just got totally blown out of the water. And I was like, bruh. So yeah, that was really tough. Um, yeah, and then he moved his like Mukhtar team up, and they just started like grabbing objectives from the boxes. So at the end of the turn, he put his Mukhtar Red Fury up on the arrow, right? And literally it took me like 5 orders to do 1 wound to the Mukhtar with like guys that are just like it's just such a favorable fight. Like I'm pretty sure at some point, yeah, no, his Mukhtar didn't even have a like a duo partner. It was literally just like a single burst Mukhtar, and my knights just literally couldn't do anything against him. They did 1 wound, and then I ended up pitching. So like at that point, right, my turn's already over. Like I've lost, you know, 5 orders just to try to put this Mukhtar down. I had lost a couple orders anyway from his Hatham just blowing through all my guys. And then I pitched because I wanted to try and at least like Trinity his other Mukhtar to try and keep him from being able to do more objectives. And I shit you not, his Mukhtar hacker literally made like 6 or 7 Trinity saves, like without a tin bot, and I was just like, dude, like what is going on right now? And you know, like it rolled around to my opponent's turn again. I think at some point in his active turn, his Hatham had died. I don't remember to what, but it did. Um, Literally almost everything I killed, by the way, was on my reactive turn. Like I only killed one Phanios remote in my active turn. Like that's the only thing I was ever able to kill. So yeah, cringe. But anyway, regardless, yeah, like he moved his other flyer into group 1, and then it was just literally the same shit all over again, right? Like using his flyer to just run up and kill like everything in my list. It's just so irritating because like look, I can try and pitch to like keep him out of my out of the midfield, but it's just not going to happen when you can jump 6 inches in the air with an S7 and shoot like whatever you want. And that's like exactly what he did, right? He was just able to skirt around all of my deployable repeaters and then just find angles on them and shoot them off the board. And I just can't do anything about it. It just really sucks. And like again, like my opponent played really well. So like this isn't me griping about like my opponent. He played well. It's more just like me being very like unsatisfied by the fact that there is a unit who can just get insane like order efficiency from the movement and whatnot. So yeah, and I do like the idea of like hack being kind of special in the sense that they get 2 different flyers. I think that's really interesting, especially when hack is really struggling to bring, excuse me, a good top end to the board, right? Like you have really good bottom end. Like you've got your Gazis and your Daylamis, and like you have good bikes and whatnot, and all those guys are just they're really good. They add a lot of value to the faction. It's just like you don't oftentimes have a very good top end, and I really like that the Flyers add that to Hackaslam. I just think that Flyers are just yeah really really overtuned right now. So anyway, that's my rant. This was the only game I didn't really enjoy as much, just mostly from the fact that like I couldn't really do anything. I got really unlucky. Um, I could have played better, obviously. Like you can play better in every single game, but this is just kind of one of those games where like I got so unlucky that I like wasn't able to focus on what I did poorly. It just felt like I couldn't do anything because of bad dice. Not to mention the fact that my opponent just played well, and he played into his strengths, the strengths of the faction very much. So, yeah. Um, anyway, like really good interaction, a very good game, just like between us two. But in terms of like gameplay, I just didn't really enjoy it that much. Um, and then here's my F in chat. I think I got 26th overall. Yeah, I'm not sure. I'd have to recheck because I think I took the screenshot before the final postings were done. But anyway, I got like around like the top to middle. But I still beat Hackney, so I feel like that's an absolute win. So final thoughts. As I was ranting about for like the past 10 minutes, I hate Flyers. They should be banned from the game. Like honestly, absolutely terrible unit. I just can't deal with it. I'm not even gonna talk about it anymore. It's making me so mad. Um, and then yeah, none of the matchups really felt that tough. I really didn't feel like, like there was, okay, besides the Flyers, right? Like in every all of my matchups, I was like, okay, I can deal with these problems that are put before me, which is really something that I didn't feel like you had in MO before the rework. So it's really nice to be able to feel like you're playing on an even playing field. Yeah, so there are still some tweaks that MO could totally use. There's like a couple of units that are kind of like useless right now. But, all of that aside, MO just feels so perfect right now. They have strengths, they have weaknesses, and I'm really glad that they didn't get overtuned because that would suck. Like playing OP factions is really, really dumb. It just makes the game not enjoyable, in my opinion. Um, and then next, wanted to say that the missions felt pretty easy. I didn't really get to play the provisioning mission, but I have played it before with MO, and it didn't. It felt really good. Um, and I actually used a very similar. Um, I used a very similar list in my provisioning. In my provisioning list that I took to Krug. And yeah, I just think that MO is really good at like moving their little night teams up into the midfield, doing objectives that way. So yeah, and then like classifieds, I think MO is definitely like a pretty good faction in terms of being able to do classifieds. You have a lot of like overlap in terms of capability, right? Like a lot of decharges, a lot of vet troops, that sort of thing. But the capability is still there, and I think you can really use you can really use those troops to be able to do classifieds very efficiently. I'm still learning the ropes of MO. It's basically like a new faction, honestly. I just like, yeah, I mean, honestly, it's very different than how they used to play. Obviously, like I still have the bones of old MO like that. I have that built up like muscle memory. But in general, I'm still taking like new lists. I'm trying out new units. A lot of the units had their stats changed. So it is just a different game overall. But yeah, I have really been enjoying my time kind of like relearning MO. And then finally, Trinitarian snipers are still king. I love them. Not everybody is a big fan, but personally, I think they just always always provide me with so much value. There's so many games I've had where like my opponent makes a careless move and then my Trinitarian just pops out of his deployment and gets a free kill. And like honestly, getting a free kill on your turn just feels so good, right? Because it's like, like your opponent just lost a valuable piece on his active turn. And like that is really bad. And it forces your opponent to kind of just like lose a lot of momentum. So yeah, I really like them for that reason. They're also just hard to deal with in general because that Mim 6. But anyway, that's all I had to say about my IGL experience. Let me know what you thought about my rant about Flyers, about the video. Yeah. Anyway, I will be making more videos soon, so I'll see y'all in the future. Bye.